This section will cover the self-erection assembly process. For this process, we'll demonstrate assembling the machine by using the boom base section to install the track frames, build the boom, and using the counterweight installation system. First, we will place the LMI into setup mode. This is done by pressing the button on the LMI showing the boom apart and holding it for 3 seconds. This will allow all functions to operate as we prepare the crane for self-assembly. Now we will raise the gantry. First, place the boom base section on the ground. Move the 3-way switch located under the cover on the left side of the cab to the gantry tagline position. Now move the gantry control switch to the up position. You will need to spool up the bottom hoist cable as the gantry is rising. Be careful not to allow too much slack in the cable, or the cable could become loose on the drum. We will now install the self-assembly load block to the boom base. Use the front drum to reeve the self-assembly block to the boom base sheaves. Install the anti-2 block weight and limit switch. Secure the load cable wedge into the wedge socket assembly. Pin the wedge socket to the boom base location. The cable on the orange reel is for the anti-2 block system. Unwind the cable as needed and connect it to the mount on the boom base. Then connect the anti-2 block cable to the limit switch and make the connection at the reel. Pull the anti-2 block limit switch by hand and check that the hook over hoist code on the LMI is eliminated. The base section is now ready to be used to assemble the crane. Now we will place the LMI into the self-removal mode. To do this, first press the menu button. Then select Settings and push Set. Scroll to Setting of the crane posture and push Set. Then select Self-Removal mode and push Set. Then use the right side arrow to select 2-part line and push Set. At this point, the LMI will automatically go into self-removal mode. We will now install the track frame assemblies onto the base machine. Use 4 leg slings and attach to the lifting eyes on the track frames. Make sure to install the softeners to protect the pads and slings. Apply grease to mounting locations and pinhole locations. The boom base is able to lift the track frame within a 16-foot radius from the center rotation of the machine to the center of the track frame. Tracks are directional, so it's important that you check decals for front, rear, left, and right side. A 360-degree swing is allowed with the first crawler frame within the 16-foot radius. Position the crawler close to the frame. Remove the hydraulic hoses from the front and rear car body frame compartments. Then connect the hoses to the quick disconnects on the track frames. Turn off the engine and connect the power cord to the receptacle on the right side of the upper structure. Then connect the control box for extending the main hydraulic track pins to the switch box. This is the same control box used to control the translifter cylinders. Place the selector switch inside the cab to the translifter position. Raise the engine speed with the hand throttle to about 1000 RPMs. Check that both of the track mounting pins are fully retracted. Lift track frame and align the mounting brackets and pin locations. The translifter cylinders can be used as needed to lift the machine for more ground clearance or to level the machine in relation to the track frame. Insert the larger hydraulic main track frame pin first by operating the inside switch on the control box. Then insert the smaller top track mounting pin. Secure all pins with the locking pin. Repeat the same process for the second track. Please remember that a 360-degree swing is not allowed after the first track is installed. Do not swing the center point of the track frame past either of the translifters on the side on which the track frame is being installed. Refer to the stability chart in the operator's manual for additional instruction. The hydraulic hoses for the track mounting pins are common to the second track. It may be necessary to bleed hydraulic pressure from the hydraulic lines to remove hoses. To do this, quickly operate the control switch on the control box in the retract position to bleed pressure if needed. After the second track is installed, place the hoses back into the frame compartment. Lower the machine to the ground and raise the translifter cylinders. Remove the floats and set them aside for later storage on the car body weights. Shut down the engine to remove the control box and power cord. Connect the hydraulic lines for the travel motors from the crawler frame to the car body locations. All these lines are fitted with quick disconnect type connectors for fast and easy installation. We are now ready to assemble the boom. Use the boom base section to position and assemble all the boom inserts. Install the boom point section onto the last boom insert. Install the auxiliary sheave to the boom tip. Install the proper guy cables as needed for each particular boom combination. You will need to refer to the boom guy line arrangement chart, which is in the operator's cab or the operator's and maintenance manual. The guy lines have the ID stamped on the end at the pin location. We are now ready to assemble the counterweight tray. Set the counterweight tray on plywood-type material on firm, level ground. Use the boom base to stack the counterweights onto the tray. Pin the links to the counterweight sections. Up to 3 counterweights can be linked together and lifted at the same time. This assembly will consist of 4 larger weights on each side of the tray and 1 smaller weight on the top of each side. We will now install the car body counterweights. Lift the linkage on the car body weight from the transport position to the working position and install the locking pins to hold the linkage in the up position. Lift the weights and install onto the car body mounting bracket locations. Secure the weights with the locking pins. We can now remove the load block from the boom base section. Lower the boom base and then set the LMI back into setup mode. Disconnect the wedge socket and spool up excess cable. Remove the anti-2 block limit switch and roll the anti-2 block cable back on the reel. We are now ready to install the counterweight assembly onto the rear of the machine. Position the rear of the machine over the counterweight assembly. Turn the ignition switch to the off position and connect the counterweight control box to the receptacle located on the right-hand side of the machine. Move the selector switch in the cab to the gantry tagline position and then start the engine. Raise the engine RPM to about 1000 RPMs. Connect the lifting links on the cylinders to the brackets on the counterweight tray. Activate both left and right-hand control switches to the up position and make adjustments as needed to keep the counterweight assembly level as it is being lifted. Stand clear of the counterweight assembly during this lifting procedure. After the counterweight assembly is completely raised, use the extension bar tool to insert the mounting pins. Lower cylinders slightly, then install locking pins and spring pins. Then continue to lower the cylinders until slide links will move into storage position. Turn the ignition switch key to the stop position and remove the control box cord from the receptacle. To finish the counterweight assembly, connect the wiring connector of the swing flasher. We are now ready to install the boom assembly. Track the machine to align the boom base with the first boom insert. Install the top boom insert connecting pins. With the boom flat on the ground, we will now connect the guy cables. We are now ready to raise the boom base and make the final connection. Slowly raise the boom to align the bottom holes. Install the double taper type boom connecting pins in the bottom holes. The double taper pins are used here for a safer disassembly of the boom. Now raise the spreader guides on the boom base section. Lower the upper spreader assembly to remove the tension from the mounting pins. Remove the spreader mounting pins, then raise the spreader assembly to clear the mounting bracket. Install the pins back into the spreader pin locations for storage, and lower the spreader guides back down into the storage position. Now slowly raise the boom up just a few feet from the ground. We will now connect the hoist cables out to the tip section. Use the front drum for the load block and the rear drum for the ball. For the demonstration, we will reeve this machine with 4-part line on the main load block and 1-part line on the load ball off of the auxiliary sheave. Install the anti-2 block weight on the cable after reeving the block. The weight with the single cable is for multi-part of line reeving. Install the wedge socket and mount onto the boom tip. When mounting the wedge socket, follow the instructions on the decal located on the boom tip to ensure it is installed in the proper direction. Install the anti-2 block limit switch to the boom tip and on the auxiliary sheave. Connect the wires for the anti-2 block system at the limit switches and complete the circuit by making the final connection at the reel. Secure the anti-2 block harness in clamps attached to the boom. Also, secure all loose wire with plastic zip ties. Confirm that all guy cable cotter pins are properly bent and all boom pins are installed and the keeper pins are in place. Use the supplied touch-up paint to repair scratches on insert pins or boom inserts. Check to make sure the boom is free of any obstacles. Pull the anti-2 limit switches by hand. The hook over hoist code on the LMI should discontinue. At this point, the only code on the LMI warning bar should be the boom out of angle. We are now ready to boom up into the working position. After the machine has reached the working radius, about 32 degrees, all fault codes on the LMI should be eliminated. Double check to make sure the anti-2 block is working on the main hook and also on the load ball. Also make sure the high boom angle kickouts are working properly. With no jib, the boom should stop at about 82 degrees.